Beginning November 1st, the police department will implement a new policy as it pertains to the response to intrusion alarms at residential properties and commercial properties. The reason for this change in a response policy called Verified Alarm Response is to maximize the available resources the police department has to ongoing issues of traffic, crime, and quality of life.
We're preparing to implement a verified alarm policy, so we're providing the shift briefings, the training bulletin that we've developed on it, and kind of going over the verified alarm policy that we're getting ready to implement on November 1st. So I want to be sure that the officers know all about what we're going to do so that when they get questions from the citizens, they're able to explain to the citizens why and how we're going to implement this policy. About 98% of the alarms that we respond to are false. In addition, of those 2% that are good alarms, our chances of catching anyone when we get there after we're dispatched again are maybe 1 or 2%. The idea is to make sure that officers, or try to give officers a little extra time for proactive work and take some of the call load off. You guys know how busy you've been, especially on this shift.
96 to 99% of all intrusion alarms are false. Anytime this police department, prior to this policy, received a silent alarm or an intrusion alarm, we sent 2 officers to respond to that specific alarm. What we found in our study is it took, on average, 15 to 20 minutes from the time the call was received through the time that it was dispatched and resolved for those officers to handle that call. Well, when you have other pressing issues in your community, traffic accidents, disturbances, assaults, robberies, burglaries, disorderly conduct kinds of situations, wasting our resources or using our resources to handle these kinds of calls when we know that almost 99% of the time they're false is a pretty significant use of resources. We looked at this from the perspective of how can we get the best bang for our buck, and how can we provide the best resources to the Wheat Ridge community. And following the lead of surrounding jurisdictions, we developed a verified alarm response that sets in place a criteria that allows our officers to make the decision in the field of whether or not they should respond to a silent alarm.
Verification is a term we use in the police department that really goes towards anything that gives dispatch center or police officers or police supervisors an idea that an alarm coming in is one based on criminal activity rather than a false alarm. And this verification can be one of several things. It can be numerous zones on an alarm, an officer's knowledge of crime trends in a particular area. It can be a witness calling in and advising the police department of criminal activity. An officer's particular understanding of any particular building or residence or alarm system.
Based a lot on officer decision-making, officer knowledge of their beat, and just kind of using your head.
For the purposes of patrol response, the city is broken down into areas that we call beats. And officers are assigned to beats and they stay in those beats for protracted periods of time. So that they learn the businesses, they learn the citizens, and they learn the functionality of that beat. When an alarm comes in, that officer's knowledge is extremely important. That's one of those things that allows us to verify that an alarm may be valid. That officer's knowledge from their experience within that police beat.
And the policy essentially states this: when the alarm company receives an intrusion alarm, they have a responsibility to verify the accuracy of that alarm. We will continue as a police department to ensure that citizens understand what this new policy is, and we'll continue to work with the alarm industry in the Denver metro area, and particularly those alarm companies that work with residents and commercial property owners in Wheat Ridge, to ensure that this policy change is as seamless as we can make it.
It's important to understand the difference between an intrusion alarm and a robbery or panic alarm. The verified alarm program only applies to intrusion alarms, those things that are sometimes called burglar alarms. Those alarms that would indicate that somebody is breaking into a business or residence and that there is a threat to property, but not a threat to personal safety. Robbery alarms, panic alarms, what are sometimes called hold-up alarms, are threats to personal safety. And the police department still responds to those as high priority calls. Nothing has changed in that regard.
The one thing that I really see it helping us with is some of our severe weather alarms. You know, you get that lightning strike out in the west end of town and all of a sudden you get 10 alarms. One of the things it's going to do is it's going to require officers to make sure that they're familiar with their beat and the burglary patterns in their beat.
The goal of the Verified Alarm Program is to regain some discretionary time for patrol officers to handle other calls, to get to other calls quicker, and to make observations on their own that require more investigation. Our goal is to try and relieve the patrol officer of 65% of the time that they have been responding to false alarms.
If you're driving around or you're in the area anyway and not busy, probably a good idea to come over the air and say, I'm going to go check that one out.
Questions come up about how is this going to affect burglary rates or the apprehension of burglars. Studies across the United States have shown that a verified alarm program changes neither of these. Burglary rates will not go up, and apprehension rates will not go down. The most success the police department has with apprehending burglars in progress don't necessarily come from alarms. It comes from aware neighbors who are calling the police when they see suspicious activity.
We will always do our best to provide the highest level of service in partnership and collaboration with residents, business owners, to ensure that everybody who visits and lives in the city of Wheat Ridge feels safe.